All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. This is typically a question and answer-based podcast. If you have a question about OCD and anxiety, you can go over to fearcastpodcast.com. You can send me a question over there, or you can send me a text message an email. That's what they're called, emails. You can send me an email that way. Or you can send in your audio questions. Click on the little button on the main page over there, and you can record your question. It gets into me. It goes to the tippity top of the list to be the next recorded. You can also go over to Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram, and you can follow me there. Or you can send me a message. If you send me a DM, click on the little microphone button in the text box, record your voice there. It also gets to me that way. Either way. So go check out past episodes as well. We've got a couple questions in the hopper, but today is a fun episode. So today we're taking a side step from questions. Instead, I had the pleasure of having on two of my favorite people in OCD land. I had on Kimberley Quinlan and I had on Chris Trondsen, two amazing, amazing therapists here to talk about their new program they put out over at CBT School on BDD, so Body Dysmorphic Disorder. So this is a great conversation I had with them about the development of the program, why they put it together, what's different about it, what's special about it, what you can gain from it and learn from it, who it's for. And it's also just fun to have this conversation with two people that really, truly are specialists in this. They know what they're doing, and they're trying to get out really good information for folks who may not have access to good therapy, or are looking for just additional help and additional support in other ways. So let me tell you just briefly about these folks, and then I'll get on to it. All right, so first off, Kimberley Quinlan. Kimberley Quinlan is a licensed MFT out of Calabasas. I worked with her briefly, I suppose, for a year or so at the OCD Center of Los Angeles, but she runs CBT School, which offers different programs for both therapists and sufferers looking for help or looking for guidance, looking for CEUs about or continuing education about OCD. She also has a private practice out in Calabasas. She does individual online therapy, and her team is also fantastic. Chris Trondsen is also a licensed therapist. He's out of Costa Mesa with the Gateway Institute. He is also the IOCDF, so the International OCD Foundation's lead master advocate. I don't know what the name for it is, but not only that, he runs the Ask an Expert or Ask the Experts. He's on every podcast out there. He's doing all the things. He is emceeing all the events at IOCDF. He is also one of the kindest, smartest therapists out there. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Kimberley Quinlan and Chris Trondsen. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. So I'm welcoming on two of my favorite people in OCD and anxiety land. So I'm welcoming on Kimberley Quinlan and Chris Trondsen. Again, both licensed MFTs, both amazing, both fantastic, both brilliant. So thank you both for joining me for today to talk about your BDD crossover CBT school program. So I want to hear all about it. So first up, again, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thanks for having us. And I love doing it with Kimberly. So I'm glad that you asked us both.
Yeah, thank
We're
you.
a package deal now. It's just how it is.
And this is even better. Because you two are, for those of you who don't know, I don't know how you don't know. If, again, Chris is everywhere. He's probably behind you right now, wherever you are. And as is Kimberly. She is on every other podcast. So now she's on here, which is amazing. So we want to just talk about what the program is, why it's different, what's important and special about it, and just to talk about the necessity of getting really good information out there and accessible for people who may not have access to a therapist and may just be looking for something really specific to supplement or augment treatment in their life towards recovery. So I guess I'll start out opening it up for both of you. Y'all can fight over who was going to answer first, but tell me a little bit about why this program started. How did the negotiation, the discussion start with this, and I guess where did the idea come from?
I can start with my end. Obviously I'm familiar with CBT school. I don't know if Kimberly even remembers, but I'd reached out to her. I had started getting some training in BFRBs, and she had a program on how to train clinicians. And I asked her, I was like, how do I buy it? And she was so sweet. She gave me access for free. But I remember going through it and just being like, wow, like I like stuff like this. I like really good trainings. And this was many years ago. So I've always been a fan and have been, aware of CBT school. And Kimberly reached out and she said, look, I'd really like to do a CBT school, both for people with lived experience and their loved ones, as well as clinicians, on how to, identify, assess, and diagnose and treat body dysmorphic disorder. I think it was a perfect timing. There's a lot of people that are, coaches or maybe clinicians not as trained in the disorder, educating people online, and it just was something that in our circles, in the BDD circles, we were just getting frustrated with. And I'm like, who better to put something out there who I know has a true heart about really helping the community. So she asked me and I said yes, because I absolutely respect and love what she does. But it was bigger and better than anything I could imagine. I'm not just saying that because she's in front of me, but Kimberly is so organized. She wants to do a good product. And to me, it didn't feel like a fluff thing. I didn't want to put out something that I felt like a clinician is going to watch it and be like, wow, I didn't learn a darn thing. Or a person with the disorder saying like, wow, it didn't really do anything. I feel like we put out something that people, if they really, really follow, can absolutely get better or treat people to get better. So that's how it came about. And I was honored.
Yeah, it was so great. I was so grateful. So, just a background on CBT school is it basically came from a moment of frustration because I was turning people away because they were from out of state and they didn't have access to like nothing. And so that's when I started making courses of literally just saying, this is how I do it, like step by step. This is the first session. This is the second session. I try to never teach things unless I really, really know them. And I do consider myself a BDD specialist, but I knew Chris could do a better job than I could. And so, of course, I'm going to ask somebody to do it. If they can do better than I can, I'm absolutely going to ask. So I loved that Chris said yes. And the cool thing is that I got to witness how Chris does it in person. He's such an amazing clinician and so specialized in BDD. And so it was really cool for me to be like sitting there with him as he taught, and I taught a couple of modules as well. But it was a great learning experience for me as well. I took a lot from it.
That's awesome. I love hearing these stories about like where this came from and what germinated the idea, because I'm as you guys were talking, I was wondering like where prior to this program, where could have people gotten good information? Was there anything similar to this that I'm already seeing no from Chris?
Sorry.
but yeah, what I'm hearing in that is that there wasn't really a program that was really accessible. There might have been some books that were out there, or there are some books that are out there, but nothing as concrete and step by step as this program is. I guess tell me a little bit about as you two were talking with each other about the differences and similarities about your approaches. I was curious, was there anything that you two learned from each other that kind of stuck out, or that you might be taking on in adapting and adopting into your own treatment for BDD?
Well, for me, Chris had already done a presentation at a conference, and he had shared the slides with me. We wanted to brand them and get them like how CBT school likes things to be done.
Yeah.
And I got to sort of witness the progression. And what was cool is Chris and I covered the same things, but in just the most nuanced, different in order. And I'm a convert now. And it was just really cool to have it be witnessed that way, because I'm very like step by step. I know some people in the mental health field don't like step by step, like they're like, mental health isn't a step by step, but I'm like, it has to be visual and step by step for me. So the program has what we call is a step by step treatment plan. It's like a visual of like the steps. And it was really cool for me to witness how Chris does it, and the way, especially the perceptual training module, because we were in a hotel room when we recorded it, and he had me be the client, and we role played it. And it was so cool to witness, because I'd never witnessed him do it the way he does it. And it was just so good.
Yeah, I want to answer your past question, and that one, of course. There really wasn't something out there. I mean, I do want to give credit. I'm a big believer in giving credit to the people that have absolutely been leading the field before I was even a clinician. So Catherine Phillips and her team have a great step-by-step workbook. And it is very thorough, and I love it. And I'm a visual person, and so there wasn't really something that was step-by-step in a kind of like a treatment program. And I had done, I've been very honored that clinicians have asked me to do in-services to their teams, but it's always an hour and 2 hour. And I'm like, how am I going to take this robust treatment and kind of slim it down to an hour or so? So that's what I loved about it. She's like, don't have it be 40 hours, but let's do 8 to 10. And I really felt that was a sweet spot. To answer your second question, I mean, this is going to sound like a canned answer, but it's so true. I really feel like Kimberley has changed the game, both for OCD, but also related disorders, with everything around self-compassion. And so when she would be filming everything with self-compassion, she doesn't do it as just like this silly little thing because she says we should do it, like check mark. I even got feedback from our recent conference that people just ate her presentation up because it was tangible stuff. Put this in your wallet, carry this with you. And it's a good reminder in body dysmorphic disorder that the people have a more ego-syntonic experience with the condition. And it really is important that that inner dialogue and the way that they talk and treat themselves is the way that they treat a cherished person. So obviously I have the book for OCD, that Kim wrote, but to really see it in action, I was just like, oh my God, this is great. And I loved her step-by-step approach. I do it too, but she's more organized than I am. And I'm just like, oh, I need to be like this with my clients. I think it would help them expect what's coming next in a positive way. So I learned a lot from her, and it was a great experience.
The funny thing is while Chris was recording, we're in this hotel room, and I'm sitting there creating the workbook as he goes, because the course for BDD sufferers has this a really great workbook, as does the clinicians. They're two separate ones. But I was like, every time he'd say something, I'd be like, oh, I have to add that to the workbook. Like I couldn't stop myself every time. So it was really fun to like additionally create these resources as Chris was talking.
I can imagine it being really easy just to make it, as you said, like 45 hours of just putting every little idea in. That must have been really hard to hold things back.
Oh, for sure. I mean, what's different about body dysmorphic disorder than OCD or related disorders is there is a past history that can influence the way that the obsessions and the behaviors and the responses are done. So there needs to be a talk about that. There's this whole area about perceptual retraining. It's a very cognitive heavy treatment. Self-compassion is a huge part. We talked a lot about co-occurring or how to better diagnose, because a lot of the conditions people get misdiagnosed for are very similar if you don't, have a good hold on it. So sure. I mean, we could have done a part 2, a part 3 and stuff. But I don't feel like if you get it, you're going to feel like something's missing. I think it's perfect, but that's why I'm glad that, we were able to do 2 of Kimberly's podcasts and kind of talk about some other additional stuff. We have some extras that she put in. So I do feel like it's super robust.
That's fantastic. I guess that it also you've alluded to this question that BDD needs to be treated different. It's not OCD, right? It's not other anxiety disorders. For folks who are kind of just trying to gather information about BDD treatment, or people who maybe aren't as familiar with it, could you talk about some of the key differences between OCD treatment and why that's different, or what is different about that from BDD treatment, and why knowing the differences between the two make a significant difference in treatment?
Yeah, I mean, personally, having both conditions, they feel like cousins, like they're slightly related, but maybe third cousins, not first cousins. Like I said, ego-dystonic, ego-syntonic. I mean, most people with OCD, even if they have a severe case, they have those moments where they recognize that this isn't them. The biggest problem we have in the BDD community is even getting people to trust that it's BDD in the first place. It's ego-syntonic. the other part about OCD and BDD that's different, people with BDD, and we talk about this in the training, is that it's really a problem of perception. We know that there's different parts of the brain that are activated to where people actually see in the mirror something differently than the average person. So if you're trying to tell somebody like, oh, this is just your imagination, or this is an imagined problem, or just an, people think you're gaslighting them because they're like, hey, Kevin, I see what I see in the mirror. So I would say with BDD, I don't even look at like the psychoeducation as just simply education to get the treatment started. I look at the psychoeducation as education. Where are your beauty standards coming from?
Yeah.
What have you started to believe about yourself? It's much more a cognitive disorder. I mean, a cognitive treatment, when we know OCD is a lot more behavioral. But the person with BDD feels like it's them. Somebody with OCD feels like it's attacking them. And so if you treat them both the same, it doesn't work. And that's what I hear all the time in my clinical practice, is someone's like, I went to this treatment center and they treat it like OCD of the appearance, more cognitive. And you're not doing overexposures. You're not having somebody wear a fat suit or put on red dots on their face, or their brain is already exaggerating it. So now you're having them actually compulse more. So it's really just, there's a problem with human connection as well. There's a problems with mind reading and belief systems. So what you're targeting is so different in BDD than it is in OCD.
Yeah, and I think what you did a beautiful job of is just also acknowledging and validating the experience of people with BDD, and that our society, it reinforces what they are thinking often. Social media reinforces it. Maybe they come from a family where everyone gets surgery and that's just the norm for the family, and how if you have BDD, it becomes like an absolute horrific cycle. So there's a lot of compared to the OCD courses, there's a lot of really like deeper understanding of like, this is where you got to where you're at, and it makes sense that you're stuck. So I think that was a really beautiful part of it.
I was just going to add quickly onto what Kimberly said. In OCD, sometimes I'll ask clients, look, everybody lives in the same house as you and they don't do the things you do. Why are they safe? Or they're in the same, church as you and they don't pray as much. Do you feel that they're less of a Christian, right? In BDD, you can't always do that because they're like, hello, every single person in my friend group has gotten this done and this done and this done. So it's really explaining why to them it's going to have a different impact than others. But yeah, there's a lot of societal reinforcement, regional reinforcement, cultural reinforcement. And if you're not addressing that, that can be a problem, because people will come back to you and say, well, all my friend does this, why can't I do it? And you have to have a good explanation for them that it's different because they have BDD and their friends don't.
Yeah. I can certainly see where this, it sounds like this treatment or this program that you're talking about has a lot more effort talking about the history of where this came from, the contributing factors to it. Do you find that differs from your work with traditional OCD?
Oh, 100%. I mean, sometimes, when I'm working with a client with OCD, they may have only been having, somebody I'm working with right now, it's been since January. So there isn't really contributing factors. They're just like, look, I've always had small signs of OCD. And then this incident happened in January. I know where it came from, but I can't seem to get it out of my head, right? People with BDD, we talk about this BDD timeline. A lot of people, when they're going through their developmental stages, they start to become middle school and teen, and in high school years. There's a lot of emphasis on connection and how your peers look at you. And, if people are already starting to use their looks as the qualifier if they're being accepted or not. I mean, this is something that people have been struggling with since they're 12 years old, and they've been reinforcing these beliefs. And so we hear people with past history of trauma. We hear about people that are from families where looks are reinforced, like Kimberly was talking about. So it is important in body dysmorphic disorder treatment that we look at the contributing factors to help a client understand how they got to this point. Some of it's going to be obvious. We live in a society that emphasizes appearance, but there's a whole attachment. I mean, all the stuff we don't do in OCD treatment around attachment, and we remember in grad school that little chapter about different attachment styles. It's important here because people have lost that attachment because they thought they didn't deserve it because of their looks, and now they're 37 and still have those same attachment struggles. You're working a lot deeper than you would with OCD.
Yeah. Could you go a little bit more into that? talking about the effect attachment has on BDD development, and then how you might work with that in treatment. I'm not trying to get y'all to give away the store, but trying to just get a little bit more information.
Yeah, I mean, we won't. Obviously our families, family of origin is so huge in childhood to help us develop a sense of safety, a sense of belonging. As we hit puberty stages, we start to see a shift in developmental stages for children, right? So more about friends, it's more about people in school, it's more about cliques, especially when it comes to attraction, right? Kids aren't dumb. They start to notice which kids are getting more attention and more crushes, and who everybody is like voting for like, class president or prom king and stuff. And so if somebody with BDD has a belief, because it is way more an emphasis on appearance at that stage in life, if they have this belief that because of their looks, it's preventing them from being able to be accepted, love, connection, friendships, then suddenly there's this need and desperation to change their appearance so that they can too fit in and be connected. Well, what we see in younger clients is they can't go get plastic surgery. So their things are camouflaging with makeup, or how they wear their hair, or what outfits they wear, etc. And as we know, this isn't a problem with appearance, it's a mental health condition. So as they start to cover and isolate more, they're actually, unfortunately, what's actually happening is the thing they fear the most is actually occurring. They're kind of withdrawing, they're asking their parents to homeschool them, etc. And so while the rest of us are sort of making these connections and kind of figuring out who we are and identity formation, people with BDD aren't getting that. So now you're working with a client, at 35 who may have never gotten that before, and you're trying to help them start to understand, hey, your worldview is attractive people, everything great. Unattractive people, nothing great. You unattractive, even more, nothing great will ever happen. Now you have to start reteaching an adult who most people kind of knew this from childhood. And I could speak on this as somebody with BDD. I even in my own treatment had to suddenly learn like how you make connections outside of appearance. What are the things people are looking for? What other gifts do you offer? And we talk about that in one of the segments of the program, is how to kind of build up yourself outside of appearance. And that's a huge part in BDD treatment.
Right. And kind of to Kimberly's point earlier, that, we live in a society where that is validated and that's reinforced so much. Our worth, our quality, who we are, what we're about, what opportunities we'll have can be dictated or be influenced by how we look or how we don't look.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my specialty in treating OCD and eating disorders, there's a huge overlap in the BDD community with an eating disorder. In some cases, they reinforce each other. So often in eating disorder recovery, people will be asked to return back to a sort of normal eating habit. But if there's an underlying BDD, they don't want to do that, which impacts their ability to recover from the eating disorder, which again, there's a cycle that plays out and that they just can both, it's a downward spiral. So I think that there's also an important component to know in that overlap too, is that it does impact someone's identity when you have BDD so much that they will engage in, and Chris talks about this at length, like they go to lengths to cope with that lack of identity and that, complete lack of worth. Eating disorders, drug abuse, substance use, suicidal ideation, like these are all, there's a huge overlap that it trickles into other areas of their lives.
Yeah. How much of your program addresses eating disorders or disordered eating? Because I can imagine that's a whole other treatment program that you could certainly do. But is it addressed? Is it talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the modules that I did.
Okay.
And because we wanted to address that, but we don't go deep into it because, again, when people are taking these courses, they're usually looking for a shorter course. Now, both of these courses are like between 10 and 12 hours. And we wouldn't have made it any shorter because every bit that's in there is necessary to know. So, but it is a beast of a course. And so we were trying to be, I wasn't going to add a huge module on eating disorders for that reason.
Yeah, we also in the beginning go into like the differences, right? And how to identify that, whether you're a person with BDD or clinician, I think that's important. Yeah, going back to your earlier question, I mean, this is how the course could have even been longer and the things we had to cut out. But I do want to give Kimberly some credit. I felt that her module, because I listened to her recording it, was robust. Like, I feel like people, especially providers or people with that need to kind of decipher how each is impacting each, et cetera, is really, really full. It just wasn't able to be like a full treatment course on how to treat eating disorders.
We wouldn't have done it justice. And that's the thing, is if we're doing something, I want it to be done very, very well. We wouldn't do it justice if we went too far into that and added it on. But I'll eventually make a course on those.
You heard it here first, folks. Or second or third, I don't know. But so, Chris, you made a really good point that my brain all of a sudden forgot. Oh no! All right, so it's going to eventually come back. So, so I'm curious then about like as oh, there it is. It's back. Who is this course primarily built for consumers, individuals, or is can clinicians also get something from this? And kind of what's that rate? No, not at all.
No,
Clinicians avoid this. It's bad for you.
No.
Okay.
When we sat down, we were at a Greek restaurant and we sat down and we talked about
the
this
detail.
option.
Thank you.
I said to him, I'm in the process with so CBT school was a side gig for me. It was a hobby. Beyond my understanding why, it's created itself into something. And so I'm in the process and have for the last year and a half where I have separated everything, and that I've wanted a separate course for OCD and a separate course for the therapist that have continuing educations. We're a CEU approved company. And so when I said to Chris, we are first going to do the clinicians one, because that was the priority, right? We need more clinicians who know how to treat this. That is the absolute priority. But then we got to recreate the entire thing into a course for the sufferer. And the sufferers was the second one we did. And it was just so great because we'd done it once and then we could just settle in and talk about like how to actually like talk one-to-one to the sufferer. So they are completely two complete separate courses.
And I was happy that we did that because I know that there's already so few resources, and you know, it's like the clinicians one would have been great for sufferers, but it wouldn't. We were able to speak directly to them. So the one for people with BDD, it wasn't an afterthought, or we didn't kind of rehash stuff. It was literally like, you know, some of the material obviously is the same, but when we were brainstorming and when we recorded it, it was really like, this is somebody sitting down who has BDD, who is in a part of the country or the world that has no other resources, and this is a program that they can understand their disorder, recognize the treatments for it, have tools, have a workbook, and see significant shift and change. The one for clinicians, it was very directed, like, here's your client. This is what you're doing in the beginning, middle. So I'm glad that we didn't try to make one size fits all. I think it would have been a little bit missing in one area for each group, but having two different courses was necessary. And I was glad we were able to do it. Plus, we got to get more Greek food, and we got to get more green tea, and we got to hang out more. So I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's do a third one for people's pets, you know.
It was a marathon recording, I have to say. Like, I would drive down to where Chris lives. We would get a hotel. I would be there. We would start early in the morning. I was up editing till late at night. But I will say, the other thing too is because they're separate, we did get to speak more specifically with clinicians about things like looking for suicidal ideation or being able to identify those who have obsessions or, you know, dysmorphia in areas where they've lost insight. And we can talk about these things that you wouldn't talk to a sufferer about, but clinicians need to understand. So that was a good part as well.
So it sounds like, so if a clinician wants to learn more about BDD treatment, they could certainly benefit from getting one or both of these programs.
Yeah, they would just need to get the clinicians one.
Fair enough. Okay. So where do you find the biggest sticking points in treatment? I always think it's important to recognize, like, you know, when we're doing treatment, clients get hung up on things. They get stuck. There are these giant obstacles in the way. And I know that everybody's different, but when you're working with BDD, where do you find these hiccups and obstacles, and how do you help address them?
I would say the biggest obstacle is the idea that they're seeing something different than other people. And we've been fortunate in this field to have Dr. Jamie Fusner leading a lot of the research on perception and the problems with perception. They've also done some really good research out of Australia. And so it's educating the client on that. We offer that in the program, but having them really understand, like, this is why you see yourself differently. And it's important for someone with BDD to understand that, because everybody around them is trying to convince them what you see isn't right. But we're told to trust our, senses since a little kid. So like, but I'm seeing this in a mirror. I could see my reflection, right? So it's really help explaining that. So the only problem is you can present somebody with all kinds of great evidence-based research. That person has to be open to take it. And that's really the word we use in the program. But I also work with clients. I'm like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I am just trying to be here to make you open to see things from a different perspective. So getting people to really kind of buy into that idea, I would say, is a big stuck point. And how we get around that is we have a lot of good evidence as to why. We also go into explaining, like, look, if your brain is already hyper vigilant and focusing on small little details you see as flaws, and then let's look at the behavior you're using to back that up, right? So if every picture you're zooming in, or you're getting this close to the mirror and you're spending hours a day, you're taking your brain, which is already zoomed in, you're adding 8 layers of zoomed in. Pretty soon, like, it's like a microscope that you're seeing something with. So that's where the perceptual retraining comes in, is like beyond just them learning and being open to this idea. The perceptual retraining really retrains them and teaches them to have a different relationship with mirrors, pictures, videos, etc., so they can start seeing themselves the same way others do. I'd say the other big step point is the idea in CBT, right? If a clinician is trying to use CBT as a way to convince a client of something, it's over, because it shouldn't be a debate. Once again, the way that I look at CBT is, hey, you have a belief. We know it came from somewhere. Let's look at all the errors in thinking that got it there. And let's also kind of expand and see if we could look at it different. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just trying to give you more information and let you come to a different conclusion now that you've recognized the errors and you recognize that it's been pretty kind of like siphoned into one belief. And you're just helping people expand the way that they see something. So I would say that's the other stuck point. I hear a lot of people that are like, hey, my last therapist tried to convince me my teeth weren't big or whatever. It's like, but it's not about the appearance in the first place. And it shouldn't be trying to convince your client of anything. It's informing them and opening them up to other belief systems and ways of seeing and doing things.
Yeah. And you also talked about something before, which I think is important, is just avoidance. Because, when you hate the way you look, you're disgusted by the way you look, or you're completely ashamed and humiliated by the way about some feature that you have or all of your body, that's a really dark place to live in your body, in your brain. But then if you avoid that connection, you have nothing to reinforce the positives of yourself. There's no joy, there's no connection, there's no love, there's no reciprocal back and forward of being vulnerable. And that can reinforce that belief about ourselves, like nobody loves me, I'm unlovable, there's something wrong with me. And so that avoidance can definitely keep people stuck as well.
Yeah, it's just this giant cycle that just keeps them going in that place.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing. And I think that's where, Chris talks a lot about, like, we can't treat BDD like OCD, but there is a degree where we do look at a lot of response prevention in reducing compulsions and quote unquote exposing them back into, like, going to the supermarket or going out with friends and so forth. So there is an ERP aspect of treatment, but not in the traditional way that we would use with OCD.
Yeah. Could you go into a little bit more of that detail about those differences? I know a lot of folks who listen to the Fearcast, we spend a lot of time talking about OCD, not a ton about BDD. So, people are more familiar with the traditional, intentional active exposure and then the response prevention piece. But you've been talking a lot about how that approach needs to be shifted. That's one of the things that needs to be broken especially when other OCD therapists might be listening to this to try to get an idea about treating BDD. How is that different? How is the quote exposure and response prevention different in BDD treatment versus OCD treatment?
Do you want to go
Mhm.
and one of the biggest things that I get told all the time is that, in sessions is that I can't go out and do these things. It'll be offensive to other people for have to look at me, or people will treat me differently, or people will be so distracted by my appearance. And so the way that I like to look at it is what I'm trying to do with a client. So let's say a client's really struggling to order things in person. This is a common BDD behavior to other people love DoorDash, right? And things like that. But the reason they're doing it is because they don't want to interact with another person.
Yeah.
So if they're seeing me, and we talk about this in the training, but if they're seeing me, one of the things we're working up to is like, let's say they like See's candy, and there's a See's candy at the mall by my office. And I'm like, okay, we're going to work up to actually.
This is very specific. Go
ahead. We're going to go into the store. We're going to sample the chocolate. We're going to purchase something. We're going to interact with the person. Let's talk about what you will be feeling. Let's talk about what you will be thinking. Okay, this is sort of like the pre-stuff that we're doing before the exposure. You have this belief system that this is going to happen. Okay, how can we test this out? Let's go test it out. But we're not overdoing something. The person's not, let's say they don't like their nose, they're not leaning in or trying to get the person to stare at the nose. I'm like, I just want you to engage with the worker simply how you would, before the BDD got so bad that you're staying at home. So you go over to the mall, we're walking in, they order, and then we process, okay, what happened? And obviously what happens is nothing. They're like, oh, they just gave me the chocolate, they checked me out, and we left. Okay, so was there anything to allude to us that there was something abnormal about you? Did you feel disrespected or long staring? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go back to that belief formation. You're telling me the reason that, your nose is bigger is because in third grade, this one girl made a comment, but you just had this great experience at the store. You just had this great experience here and that. It's a lot of learning. That's how I like to think about it. It's learning, but it's human connection. My exposures are just me. Well, I take that back. Sometimes it is me in the office, because sometimes I'm the first person they've even come and seen in a long time. But outside of like them, connecting with me, you can't really do treatment alone in an office. It's not really going to do anything. It's a lot of like human connection, engaging with people. And like Kimberly was saying earlier, because of the avoidance, they've lost the connection with people, which makes it easier for BDD to tell them you're so hideous, no one wants to be around you. But as we start to go out and there aren't gawkers and stares and people pointing and they have a good experience, they learn, okay, this is an internal problem, not an external problem. And that's what we're trying to get the client, because we can work on internal stuff. That's why you're seeing me. I'm not a specialist at fixing people's appearance, and I don't want to be. So, but that's not the problem at all. You just went to a public venue and nobody reacted in the way that you had thought.
Yeah. And I will admit to a mistake that I made as an early clinician is I misunderstood that with exposure and response prevention with OCD, you identify their fear and you worked with exposure and response prevention to have them face that fear and reduce the compulsion. Well, with BDD, their fear is like people will judge them, or that they are hideous, or that their body is weird and strange. And so my thought logic was like, well, I'll expose them to looking hideous. I will encourage them to look more hideous and so forth. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong in all cases. In some cases, we do need to do that work, but that is not the appropriate way to use exposure and response prevention with someone with BDD. We don't need them to stand in front of a distorted mirror to make it more warped. We actually need to get them back to functioning and being around people and looking at what they're avoiding. So that was a learning process for me way early in my treatment career, where you're like, wait, this is not helpful.
Yeah, and that's a big shift. And I think it's an important shift for people to to consider and internalize. Boy, you were mentioning that you two are so eloquent. It's so frustrating. Why are you two like this? And then I'm over here with my questions. So I'm hearing hints of like the inhibitory learning model, because I know we talk about that on this podcast here and there. Is there some of that that's incorporated into that, or does it feel like am I just reading into this?
No, you're right. I mean, I think of treatment as a teaching tool. And even before I understood what inhibitory learning was, like how I always approached BDD treatment, because to me, it's like you're not, Sure, habituation comes into play at times, right? People get kind of used to being in public, or they're used to doing something. But what I find works better in BDD is, what did they learn? They had this hardened belief that they were going to go in public and this horrific thing was going to happen, or that they're going to start dating again. And every comment on their dating profile is like, I would never date somebody with this crooked of a jaw, right? And then when it doesn't happen, they're learning something. And what going back to what I was saying earlier is, one of the things I do in a BDD timeline with clients is like, where are all those moments that helped reinforce there's something wrong with your appearance? And I have them use a blue marker in my office for that come internally, and orange for externally. And there's always like 1% orange, and it's always when they were like 14, and everything else is blue, meaning that their brains have kind of created this belief about themselves. And so that's what I'm trying to get somebody to learn. And so what I want the client to be able to do is less like, oh, I'm used to being, ordering at C's Candy, but more so like, nothing that I had been promised by BDD happened when I was in that store. Right. I had avoided something like that for 2 years because I was told with vivid imagination, everybody staring, gawking, pointing, right? And none of it occurred. And in fact, like Kimberly is saying, we get a lot of our self-esteem from connecting with others and them saying thank you and giving us compliments and stuff. And so by going out and, engaging with people, I've had clients where somebody said something nice to them, or I like your shirt, or I had a client once and this lady's like, oh, I'm sure you get all the ladies. And, here my client hasn't dated in 5 years because of his BDD. So sometimes people just get that connection, and it reinforces that there's nothing wrong and they belong. And that's important.
Yeah. And that avoidance, it just reinforces the whole cycle. Because if you don't have those new experiences, those experiences that challenge that internal narrative, then we just reinforce the idea. See, I am this gargoyle. I am this monster, because that's all the narrative that I'm hearing. But going out, you don't see that. I also love that you're really focusing on what people are experiencing rather than what they believe they should or will experience.
Yeah. And I always remind, like, people aren't super nice, because that's what clients will tell me all the time. They're like, oh, well, the first time we come back, oh, everybody was being nice. And I'm like, okay, what? Like, just the other day, like a lady, I went to a concert with a friend of my sister, and I was in line, and my sister and my friend came up to say something to me, and a lady behind was like, you better not cut me. And my sister and my friend were like, oh my God, let's just leave, right? So people our kids are pointing at things and saying things. So people learn that there isn't this kind of like, everybody on the planet got a text to like fake treat people nice. Like, people have to start to own up and say, look, my brain has created one kind of reality, but when I'm really out there, like, people are kind and people are treating me nice and people aren't laughing. And sometimes I've had clients have an experience with someone being rude, but they've noticed that lady has been rude to everybody in line, and they don't internalize it. So people are learning that, hey, there isn't this kind of like magnification on me when I walk in places. It's not a movie where the DJ stops the music and everybody turns. And it sounds like, how do they not know that? But hey, the person that's been in housebound for the last 5 years, and every time they go out, everything is kind of covered, they really lose sight on, real human connection and understanding of what it's like to really go out there and be with people. And that's what you're trying to hope to do in the treatment.
Yeah. And there's that point where you're also illustrating that you're not convincing someone that they look a certain way or they don't look a certain way. Just showing them that the experience that they believe they're going to have isn't what they're actually experiencing, isn't what is coming their way. So it needs to change that perspective.
Yeah, I think that is the cool piece of it is, I mean, I just did an exposure yesterday with a client, and we just went across the street to the gas station. That was the first big thing they had done in a very long time. And yes, as Chris was explaining, like, their hair was like down around here, and that was fine. I was so proud of them. The next cool thing was we went across the street to the other gas station. You know how they're kind of always kitty corner to each other. I was like, I just want you to practice not putting your hair in front of your face. But what was so cool is they actually noticed that it was also a habit. Like, they didn't even really realize that they were doing it, but I would notice it and like give them a little wink, because they were doing this action that they weren't wanting to do, but they were doing. So I think sometimes even with exposure, it helps them to become more aware of this very habitual action that they have taken for many years. And sometimes, like I'll say, we're not here to have you not think certain thoughts. You're probably going to think them, but we can also just work at you first, just reducing these habitual problems as well. Like, I don't want clients and any of our students to feel like they have to get rid of all of it at once. Like, this is we shave away behaviors one at a time, and that's a win. We goal for small baby wins.
Yeah. When you're describing kind of going out and like covering everything up, it made me think, like, sometimes folks will go out and they have this perception that everyone's looking at them or gawking at them and judging them, and because they look X, Y, and Z, they look a certain way, and they'll reference, they'll like, see, all these people were looking at me. Like, well, were they looking at you because of this? Were they looking at you because you're huddled over and your behaviors are very atypical? But they attribute that not to these other behaviors, that what the compulsions are, what they're producing. They attribute it to themselves and this perception.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's such a cognitive bias too in the, having BDD. And so if you're already assuming that people are going to be staring at you and looking at you, they are. And look, they've also done research additionally to notice that people with BDD misread faces. It's one of the things, unfortunately, that they do. And so that's why people will really be convinced. I was working with a client who's like, those people are staring, they're taking pictures of me. But it's not a paranoia, it's the way that their brain is processing that. So once again, thinking of this treatment as a teaching tool, it was like continuing to go out, continuing to notice that, hey, when you're in kind of this cognitive bias and you're sort of like, freaking out, you're going to see everything that the disorder tells you. But if you relax, if you go in with a neutral mindset, you start to recognize, like, oh, they were actually just looking at their phones. I always joke with my clients, I'm like, you're not Ariana Grande. Like, you're not going to walk into Starbucks and everybody's going to take pictures and point and stare. It feels like that. Yeah. But that's what the exposure is to me, it's kind of proving something. And so people learn, like, oh yeah, like, it's kind of not that exciting. I walked into Starbucks and walked out and this whole event didn't happen. Like, my brain had been making up.
Is there a point?
Now, Kimberly's Ariana Grande, so when she goes out, people take pictures and stare.
I don't think so.
The rest of us, nobody cares.
I don't think I could pull off that level of awesomeness. I'm sorry.
I think you could. Can you do the hair flip from Wicked? There you go. She's doing it. Yeah.
I've just proven I can't do it. And I'll put my back out now.
Well, yeah, join the club. Well, then that standing desk is going to come in handy, isn't it? Yeah. It is. So this whole description was now just driving everybody over to YouTube to watch this video, so you can see the hair flip. It's very important. Yeah, you were talking about. I'll just skip past that again. I get distracted in my brain. It is for the record. It is late in the day. I'm making excuses. Doesn't matter. All right. So, what does recovery for BDD look like? I think some people, is the hope. People, I mean, I can imagine people are going to start treatment in their hope that they are going to end treatment and they are going to have full confidence in their appearance. They're never going to have a doubtful thought in their mind. They're never going to feel afraid again. What does recovery look like?
What's different, I think, with OCD and BDD especially is appearance is kind of part of life, right? Showering for 5 hours isn't, but grooming and things like that is part of life. And so I have a client with BDD that I had a little bit before this, and that's what we were talking about. I mean, a first important thing is to look at your community, right? So this client happens to be gay, and in the gay male community, there are certain expectations and there's certain kind of like norms. So the goal is to, what does your kind of community do? What is general grooming? What is normal looking? But the idea of recovery is getting to a point where you're making connections, you're doing the things that you like to do, you're getting back into dating, spending time with friends, leaving the house, etc. But it's not that you're loving 100% of your appearance. I think, when we've looked at research with people without BDD, I mean, people tend to like 40 to 60% of their appearance. We see sometimes higher numbers in certain fields like models and stuff to 80%, but there isn't somebody out there that loves 100% of their appearance or thinks everything looks great. So that wouldn't be what we're trying to get to recovery. We're trying to say, hey, people out there without the disorder, what is it, right? We're trying to get a focus on what is life like without appearance. Appearance is one little thing that makes them up. It can't be the thing. So that's how I look at recovery. Do clients still wash their face, or do they still get haircuts? Of course, yeah, you can definitely do that. I will say part of what we're hoping in recovery is that a person has put a stop to any kind of plastic surgery or any cosmetic treatments that are over the top. I even encourage clients, like I know so many people are getting things like fillers and Botox, but can you at least put it off for a while? So you really can kind of experience life right now without like appearance and appointments for cosmetic interventions isn't on your calendar this year, right? So you're just trying to get somebody that is at a comfort with themselves. They're engaging with people, and they're not doing anything to alter their appearance, and they have that understanding that their appearance isn't the key to happiness.
Yeah,
it's not everything.
And one thing we talk about in the clinician's course is tapering down sessions to see whether the work has helped, as a way of sort of monitoring their recovery. Now, a lot of clients that I have treated have recovered to the degree in which they're fully functioning. They don't spend the day beating themselves up anymore. They can go to work. They can wear a bathing suit, even if it's not like, they might wear a cover up, and that that's what they're comfortable in, not that, they're hiding, but they can go to the beach if they need to, or they can be in photos if they need to. But a big part of that, that looking at that, I've lost my train of thought in terms of
Join the club.
1 second, it's right there. Relapse prevention is the word. So in regards to relapse prevention, we do want to spend some time talking about aging, because as you age, it's easy to fall into society's pressure to tighten this up and buy this expensive anti-wrinkle cream, and helping them to be able to determine what is a value-based decision and what is old BDD just coming back. And so a piece of recovery as we taper out is having those conversations in what will you do when things start to change, or you start to see wrinkles, or your weight gain or weight loss, depending on aging. So that's a component where I often encourage clients to, even if it's every 6 months, have a check-in to sort of maintain and keep an eye on how BDD can convince them back into old behaviors.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add quickly, one thing that the BDD Foundation has put out is this idea behind Theory A and Theory B. And Theory A is that, hey, there is something wrong with my appearance, and that's the problem. Theory B is that my preoccupation with this part of my features, my part of my appearance, is the problem. And that's where I just wanted to add that, is that's how I look at recovery, is that preoccupation has been treated. So people can still care about their appearance, but it's that preoccupation that's gone, because that's where it really becomes the last D in BDD, where it becomes a disordered lifestyle.
Yeah. And forgive me for just returning back to this, as Chris just made me remember, there are people who do have something different about their body. They might have a mole that covers a part of their face, or they may have a limb or an eyebrow that is asymmetrical, but recovery can happen for those as well. It doesn't have to be that they perceive it and it is all in their head. Sometimes it can be that they come to a degree of acceptance around this thing that they notice, whether it's hair loss or wrinkles, or, it could be, we talk a lot in the course about bigorexia and muscle dysmorphia. So it can be that you identify something that's real, but recovery is still possible for those folks too.
It's funny because Kimberly read my mind, because we hadn't mentioned like muscle dysmorphia this whole time, and I was going to say it and she said it. But that's another example, right? Is that there is a whole gym culture, and there are a lot of people that want to get very muscular and they get rewarded for that. So what does recovery look like? Well, just like the disorder is black or white, we don't want the treatment to be black or white. It doesn't mean somebody has to quit the gym, not work out, whatever. It just means, are you using steroids? Are you missing out on things? I worked with a client with muscle dysmorphia, and he was going to miss his prom. And I'm like, no, you are going to your prom. We will figure out, get something around it. So that's a whole part of it too, is working out is still a part of everyday life, but how does somebody do it so that it is enhancing their life versus taking it over?
Yeah, as you were talking about it, my brain was going to videos that I'll see on Reddit of dudes using synthol to artificially boost their muscles, and it looks very uncomfortable. But yeah, it's another aspect of it.
And there's health. I mean, the thing is that besides the suicidality component that we definitely address, but there's also health ramifications in other places. I mean, people are overworking out because they feel like their cheeks are too big when they smile. So they don't necessarily want to lose weight, but they want their cheeks to be thinner when they smile. So they're restricting certain foods, and that's putting them in a health, risk. People with muscle dysmorphia, obviously steroids and other things, but people with BDD are overusing products, and sometimes they burnt their skin in an attempt because, they buy retinol and they're supposed to do a thin layer, yet they'll put 3 layers on because they'll wear it during the day, even though you're only supposed to wear it at night. So there's a lot of health problems that people can cause as well in desperation.
What can family members and loved ones do to help someone who they think may be struggling with this seek help?
Yeah, well, I hope the course is an option, right? I feel like it's a non-committal, like obviously we're asking people to do a lot, but because of the comfort of their own home and their own pace, it can maybe feel less scary than seeing a treatment provider. So I like that aspect of it. For family members and loved ones, I think one thing to remember is you're not their therapist, right? So to keep living on them, but to start to pull appearance out of the conversation. So sometimes parents themselves are really, concerned with their appearance, and that could be something they need to address. Or they're getting in that back and forth with their loved one, but your skin looks great, but you look amazing, you're so handsome. Even though you're complimenting them, it's still making that conversation about appearance. And so you're really trying to bring forth pride in the other aspects of your loved one. So making sure the conversations are around the things that they're accomplishing or their hobbies or the way that they treat others. I think additionally is, having them sit down and do the program with them, both learn together, kind of recognize that this can be sort of like a family joint venture, so that you can both get better educated. And then ultimately, if your loved one isn't willing, I think the program is great for them too, really understanding what your loved one's going through and what things are not helpful. And if you're contributing to some of those things, like I said, I have had parents paying for their loved one surgeries, paying for their loved one Botox and other interventions. So starting to say, hey, how can I pull back the reinforcement of BDD while promoting independence and autonomy and self-love? So I think that's a role of a parent.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is for family members to know that this is not vanity. This is not them being overly vain about their looks. This is a mental health condition. They're in tremendous degrees of distress. So you try to, recalibrate that belief, if that's what you have, about your loved one, because they're not being vain, that they would do anything not to be in this situation.
Yeah. Amen to that, for sure. And I think that's what, why we say, like, if you can't get a loved one to do it, the program's good for them too, to get a good understanding. I think it's going to shift the conversations at home to have your loved one be more open. Because if people are like, you look fine, it's invalidating, even though they're right. The parent is right. They look fine. It's validating to their struggle. It's invalidating to their distress. If you're treating it as vanity or just get over it, there's people dying, that clients tell me that parents say that all the time. Once again, it's invalidating. So I think it's to learn the language and what things you can say and do as a loved one. We really try to cover that in the program as well, so that loved ones can start to talk to the person in their life struggling in a way that the person is feeling heard. And that's going to make them more open to suggestions like treatment, et cetera, than if you're just shutting them down.
Well, I know I've taken up so much of your time already, but so I want to wrap it up. Is there anything that you'd want to that we didn't cover that you'd want to address, either within to talk about either the program itself or about BDD, or something that would encourage someone who may be kind of on the fence, that maybe they're thinking about getting treatment or kind of tiptoeing into that? Is there something that you'd want to address at the tail end of this?
I mean, when I do follow-up research or surveys on our courses, one of the most helpful things people say is it was an easy way for me to dip my toe into treatment when I'm not ready. Right? I just want to understand what it's going to look like, and I want to understand what the process will be. And so I think that's okay. It's okay if you need to a slow, gradual, and, step into treatment. Now, if you don't have access to treatment can be very, very expensive. We tried to make this at a price that's less than like one session with a therapist. And so my hope is that you just feel understood and that you feel taken care of, and that, with baby steps, you can get your life back.
I think for me, man, I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to sum it up. But for me, I would say that I'll speak to clinicians and then people with. I think for clinicians, it's hard to talk about this because it's like me, so it's like, but even if I wasn't part of this, what I liked about what Kimberley did is it's how my brain works, and I've heard that from people as well, as they're like, I want a course of what to do first to last session. Now, obviously, what's great about the program, because it's in these different modules, say you're a clinician that's like, I don't need to do the education part. I know what BDD is and I know how to diagnose it. Great. Don't go to those modules. We have other modules for you, and you can repeat them and listen to them over and over. This is your program. Now that you purchased it, you could do with it whatever you want. So I like the way that it's done. So I think for clinicians out there that really want to get training and know what to do from start to finish, take me out of it. I think that's what Kimberley did with this program. So I really love that it's CE approved, because people could both earn those CEs as well as continue learning. But I would say that I'm proud of it, because I don't feel like I said it was this kind of watered down. I feel like somebody who is a clinician, and I think it's our responsibility. I don't treat stuff I don't understand and have training behind. So if you're a clinician who's treating OCD, you're going to get BDD clients come in, or eating disorders or other things. Please do if you don't like our program, I don't know another one, but go find it and do that instead, but do some program, right? But I think for clinicians, what I hope they see is like, wow, this is very thorough. Kimberley and Chris didn't like meet on a Tuesday and record it on a Wednesday. It was months of planning, a lot of months, and I'm proud of that, right? We spent a lot of time on it. I think for the people with, Kimberley already kind of stole my answer, but it is really hard to accept you have BDD. Everything in your senses is telling you like, this is not a disorder. This is me looking this way. It's a fact. But I want you to ask yourself, you have spent years doing new products and covering and camouflaging and going to surgeons and going to interventionists and asking all these people, and nothing has changed. So can you at least be open maybe to hear the things we talk about in the program? You don't even have to do any of the things we ask you to do, but at least just watch it and see if there's something in there that can help shift that belief. And then for the people that are ready to like sink their teeth in, Kimberley created an amazing workbook, right? It's not going to be just this watch thing. You're going to be doing things. You're going to be asked to make changes. And I don't feel like it was just, once again, like a fluff program where we're taught, I feel like if people really are ready and they can sink their teeth in and do it, I think they're going to have a lot of positive outcomes. But it feels like a kid. I don't have children, so this is the closest. And it feels like,
we had a baby together.
Yes.
2 babies.
Yay! Hopefully they both have Australian accents and not Californian.
We did make some beautiful babies. That's true.
Yeah, my mom always says, you do have an accent. You say like a lot. And I'm like, thanks a lot. Now I have to overthink me saying like. That's
the spirit. Thing. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. But yeah, that's all I say is, just proud of it. And I'm excited to get feedback and people learn from it and grow from it. And pretty thorough. I'm proud of what we did, but I hope, just my overall saying to everybody with BDD, I just really, really hope you get help. As somebody's been on the other side of it, I just remember those days where you didn't want to live, you didn't want to be there. And I think that's what drives Kimberley and I most, is just, we really want people to be on the other side of that and be able to take advantage of what life has to offer. And it's hard to do that when you don't feel like you even deserve love, which is what most people with BDD think. So
yeah, that's so powerful. I'm really excited. I'm going to go and buy this right now. I want to watch it. So I'll let you all go here, but I appreciate you spending so much time talking about this and spending all this time putting this program together. I've no doubt this is going to be a game changer for a lot of people out there who are struggling and looking for just where to start. And I love the idea of it being this kind of private thing that they can kind of do on their own without that. I got to drive over to a therapist and I've got to go and face this person. It's this thing of just being able to get somebody started in an easy way, without it being this big giant commitment. So, thank you too for putting this together for that community.
Thanks for having us.
I just wanted to add to something you said. I think what was cool too is Kimberly and I didn't have this pre-meeting. Like, we want people to come see us as clinicians, so let's hold out on the things, right?
Yeah.
We really put everything that we do with our clients into this. So I hope people know that they get a full part. And Kimberly doesn't know this, but I already have other ideas, because I think we should do workshops. I think we should do like an advanced training for clinicians. So we're going to do other stuff. And then when we do that, Kevin, you will definitely be the 8th podcast we come to talk about it.
Yes. Moving up, everybody. Well, as I tell everybody, my job is to put myself out of a job. And I think that's what we're here to do. So again, thank you so much for spending the time, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you to Kimberly for putting this all together. It's amazing. And thank you, Kevin, for having us on. It's been great. And I do want to put myself out of business so that I can own a Greek restaurant on an island somewhere in Greece.
I don't want to be out of business. I like my job.
I do too. But Kevin just put that in our heads. He said, get out of business. So I know. Well, here's my plan is I'm going to own the restaurant and run it at night, and then see clients during the day.
And I'll become a massage therapist.
There you go, Kevin. Chris doesn't know this story.
This was a
I don't know the story,
This was a
but
weird
I really
joke. Everybody's gonna miss this. I might cut this out. We'll see.
Well, I was going to say, I don't really want to own a Greek restaurant because I'm terrible. I have no other talents but this. So I'm trying to not put myself out of job. But I really, like I said, I hope this helps people, especially people that can afford or can't get to. And I think people with BDD have a hard time seeing people in person. So this program will help them.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, have a good day.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.